Ready, set, go. All right, so what we have, I noticed that we had a little problem after we did the translate and the scale to create this larger tree here. We really needed to kind of be a little bit more careful with how we're using translate and scale. When you run this now, you might notice that there is no mouse coordinates up at the top. And that's partly because I've come in and created this kind of jumped problem here where, there we go, where I've moved it over, and now everything on the entire screen is now moving up and back -40. So the text that we need for the mouse to show up is there, but it's actually up here somewhere. So there's two different ways to kind of go about fixing this. One is to go in and have it translate itself back. So if I do that, I have it translate -40, 40, and then have it translate back. If I run that, it's really, what's happened is it's moving everything in the screen one way, and then it's moving everything back. Now you'll notice that the scale of this is different. It's actually much larger than it was before, and that's because that scale effect is still working. The scale here is, if it's 1, it is at its scale. It is at its normal scale. That's like if you're multiplying a number by 1, you're going to get exactly the same number. So when you're doing it to that, you get that same kind of behavior. When you do 1.5, that means you're increasing the size of it by 50%. And if you go to 2, you're doing it, a full 200% from there, and so on. And so if I wanted to, I could then tell it to scale itself back. So here I've scaled it up and then moved it back. There's another option that we can do to make all this kind of a little bit more contained. So if you're going to start moving things around, there's 2 commands that you can put on either side of your code that'll make it so that it can only be contained inside that area. And I like to think of it as like a bubble. Like, here's a bubble where you're going to change the kind of rules of the universe or the space inside that bubble. You can push it, and you push to make the bubble, and then you use this command pop to pop the bubble. So that's why I like the bubble kind of analogy. Here, what I could do is I could say use the command called push. And when I do that, now everything that happens in here until I tell it to pop should actually keep everything contained. Now I'm going to comment out the other 2 lines that I added to it. And when I run this, it should, in theory, keep everything the way it should be. So now I've made this one bigger, I've scaled it, it's all within inside the push and the pop. And a trick that I use to make it so that it's really clear that I've kept all this in that same space is to kind of tab that in. Oops. Is to tab all of these in. I thought I'd be able to tab as all one big thing. But by doing that, then you kind of have a better idea on what is inside or outside of your push-pop kind of bubble. So I don't really need these other 2 commands anymore, and I'll take them out. But that push-pop will make it so that I can do this to multiple trees and place them anywhere I want, and it'll be much easier for me to kind of control what gets translated and what doesn't, what gets scaled and what doesn't. So that's an important little distinction we kind of had to add in there for it. All right. So let's get to our animations next, coming up in this next video. It's definitely one of the ones that I find very enjoyable when we do it.